Welcome to Functional Fourth Trimester, a podcast created to support new parents as they return to daily life after having a baby.
Each episode will talk through common postpartum challenges, share practical education and strategies, and hear from real parents and healthcare professionals along the way.
Whether you're listening during a feeding, a walk, or a quiet moment, this space is for you. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Melissa, and we're excited to jump right into today's topic.
You can plan and prepare for every detail of birth, but what happens when it doesn't go as planned? When the unexpected takes over and fear replaces excitement. Today, we're talking all about the realities of traumatic and unexpected birth experiences and what comes after.
I'm happy to introduce our guest today, Rachel. She's a mom to one beautiful daughter and a pediatric occupational therapist from Richmond, Kentucky. We are so glad to have you join us today. So welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, welcome. We are so happy that you're here joining us today. I would love to start off talking a little bit about your birth experience and kind of what made it either traumatic or unexpected for you.
Yeah, so I had my daughter at 36 weeks. She got evicted, basically. I went preeclamptic, and so it was kind of crazy. So I birthed on a Thursday. It was on New Year's Day. And so on that was a Thursday. So on that Monday, I had an OB appointment. My blood pressure was perfectly fine. And then by Tuesday night, I was being admitted, and my blood pressure was 160 over, I want to say the bottom was in the 90s. It was really fast. So that was very unexpected. It just kind of went from 0 to 100 really fast, and then we just went from there. But it was a little bit wild, so we were slacking a little bit and hadn't even packed our hospital bag and everything. We did have our car seat installed, thank goodness. But I just made my husband pack us a bag really fast. He only packed like one shirt, two shirts for himself. It was a time. But so we got to our hospital, and I started getting admitted at 11 p.m. on that Tuesday, labored that whole time, induction through to Thursday, and then Thursday on New Year's Day, it was 4:43 a.m. I birthed my daughter. So it was a little wild, but so I noticed at home that my blood pressure was high, and just having a medical background, I was like, no, I'm gonna get triage. That's not right. The phone triage lady just said, you're probably stressed. Just sit down for a little bit. I was like, no, my top number is 160. It was going into the 170s, so I booked it up to the hospital with my husband and got triaged, and I just got admitted, and that was that. So then they started me on magnesium. There's my cat. He's jumping up to say hello. But I was started on magnesium, and that was the time. Magnesium was not fun. It burns really badly, and it makes you feel not right, basically mentally. It makes you kind of out of it, spacey. And so I didn't have any idea what was going on the whole time. And then it also makes you really warm. So my room, I probably had it set on like 55 degrees. Like it was very cold in there, and I was just burning up. But
I have a
so
question, Rachel, for a mom
yeah.
who is maybe listening to this who
Mhm.
is pregnant and hasn't had her baby. Can you
Mhm.
or do you understand why they put you on magnesium? Just
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so magnesium is a neuroprotective. It protects your brain from stroke seizure risk. And so when you have that high blood pressure, it is preventative basically to help that protect your brain from that high pressure. And so magnesium is just, it's a helper in that, but the side effects can be kind of crazy, just hot flashes and feeling a little silly mentally. But yeah, so I was in labor Tuesday, Thursday. I birthed, and so that Wednesday I was just totally in labor the whole time. I have a lot of memory loss from just how exhausted I was in labor, just I had this lovely birth plan where I was going to go unmedicated and I was going to do all the things and I was wanting to push squatting, all these fun things. No, I I tapped out of that really fast, which is okay as long as baby is safe and mom is safe. I always knew that parts of my birth plan might not, you know, come to fruition and that's okay, but your birth plan is just hopes and wishes for your birth. You can't fully, plan birth. Baby has its own. Your body and your baby have their own plans, and you may or may not be aware of them. So,
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all that information with us.
Yeah.
I think it's wild that on Monday at your appointment, blood pressure was all good, and then the next day it just so much changed so fast.
it was insane how
Yeah.
fast it changed. And I had noticed my blood pressure normally runs insanely low, and my heart rate too. I normally run in the 110s, 100s, maybe on my top number. My bottom number can be in the 60s, 70s. I run really low. And then my
Mhm.
heart rate resting is usually in the 40s or 50s. Well, not really 40s, that's more sleep, but my heart rate in resting is normally in the 50s. So,
I'm glad that you like knew your body so well to know that it wasn't
mhm.
normal for you. And so like when you're on
Yes.
the phone with the triage nurse, you're like, no, this is
Yes.
actually concerning. This is,
Yeah.
way above my normal. And I
hmm
think just having your background and that knowledge is really helpful to be able to understand
I
and like
yeah.
advocate for, no, something might be up.
I think that saved me a little bit because I mean the phone triage lady isn't with you in person. They don't know anything about your history other than what you tell them, and that's just a diagnosis name. And so they try their best without being able to physically see you, but at the same time I knew something was wrong. I felt bad, and so you know yourself best, and sometimes it's fine, and I hope I that's a good thing if everything's fine, but if it's not, triage is always there in person. You can if nothing's wrong, then nothing's wrong and you just go home. But I'm very glad I went in because I had a
Mhm.
baby.
Yeah.
It's
So,
great how you said you know your body best because that's very true.
yes.
And you mentioned
Mhm.
earlier how you know that you ran low with your blood pressure. So maybe what was within the like normal safe range was not actually normal or safe for you. So you being aware of that and
Mhm.
going in, I think is amazing. That's definitely a New Year's Eve and New Year's Day that you're not going to forget for many reasons based on
Yes.
your experience, but also you brought a new life into the world. I am curious to hear more about the memory loss portion that you
Yeah.
talked about. Like, what did that look like? Was it like longer lasting, or kind of how did you
Mhm.
overcome that?
It's very interesting. So for this podcast, I had to sit there and go on my notes app in my phone and recount my birth and really try to remember everything. And I remember the big parts. I remember, labor earlier. It's mostly the middle part that's fuzzier, and then right after birth is really fuzzy too. So I got just so exhausted from labor. It was just really hard on my body. I was very exhausted. And so I think that might have some to do with it. But birth trauma is funny because people can do trauma Olympics all day. There's people out there that my birth would have been the ideal for them. Like there's people that might not even consider this like super traumatic compared to what they went through. There's definitely way worse scenarios, but your story is your story also. And so mine was, I think, the trauma side of it was the loss of the control for me, and then just having basically everything turn the opposite of how I thought it might go, but also just how bad my body was. I was just throwing up bile every time I moved or anything. Every time I looked at a light or anything, I would throw up. I counted because out of spite, I counted. And I threw up. I stopped counting at 35 times, and I had a 29-hour labor, so it was rough. And then just some my pelvic floor was very, very high tonicity, very tight, and so the muscles didn't want to give, and I had trouble relaxing them. And so that was another thing that I think had me tear pretty bad. I tore internally as well as externally on the inside and outside. And then there's things I still don't even remember where I know it was scary and I can't even recount it. And I think that's part of the memory loss. And so I think the memory loss is partly due to how scary it was health wise for me, and how high my blood pressure got might have influenced it. At one point around my birth, it was either right before or right after, I they didn't tell me what my blood pressure number was, but I looked over at the monitor and my vision was blurry because of the magnesium, but I saw a 2 on the top, so I know I was in the 200s, and so I don't know what it was, but it wasn't good, and so that might have also contributed to it, just
For
not
sure.
being your best at all physically.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But it's very
You said
intriguing. There's yeah.
you
Yeah.
said something that I want to repeat. You said
Mhm.
your story is your story. I think it's really important because sometimes as a mom, you might try to discount your traumatic experience. And
Mhm.
I think any experience can be traumatic if it's not even just what you're envisioning or planning. It turned into something
Yeah.
that you didn't imagine. So even
Mhm.
the smallest thing, I believe that we should not discount those things that to us felt traumatic, that we weren't
Definitely.
prepared for, that we didn't expect, and be able to process those, not
Mhm.
push them down inside and be like, well, somebody else had a much more traumatic experience than me. And I should not even consider this traumatic because it wasn't that bad compared to other people. It is so true that your story is your story and you need to process it in the way that you need to process it. And trauma doesn't have a specific box it fits inside. You don't
Mhm.
have to fit a mold for your story to feel traumatic to you.
Mhm. Yeah, that's such a good point, and that helped me in the early postpartum because in the first week or so, I was like thinking to myself as like, I think I'm kind of shocked from this and kind of scarred, but I don't know if this fits the mold of birth trauma. Everybody is so different and everyone processes things so differently, and your birth is your own. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
You kind of started touching on my next question about like
Mm.
in the days and
Mhm.
weeks that followed your birth, like were there ways that you noticed it was impacting you, whether that was physically, emotionally, kind of just like how did you see it kind of carrying over into postpartum?
Yeah, so I didn't realize kind of how scarred I was until I got home. And I was preeclamptic for a while after birth. The Preeclampsia Foundation, I also want to shout out to them because they gave me a lot of resources and information that just helped my journey. But pre doesn't necessarily end whenever you birth. My cat is cuddling. But pregnancy doesn't necessarily end when you birth. It ends when your blood pressure goes back down. And even being in healthcare, I work with pediatrics, but I work once they're here, not in the birth space. And so I actually didn't really know that. And so that was one thing that helped me advocate for myself and get on the appropriate medications, everything. I was really weak whenever I came home. I felt like I could barely even sit up, and family would want to visit and everything, and I wanted them to, but I realized I had an hour limit, and then I would have to lay down and make myself sleep because I would physically be so exhausted. But things kind of started trickling in and realizing things in the days right when I got home, and I was trying to go around the house or just remember my birth and talking to family and them just asking, how did your birth go? I would realize I couldn't remember a hour long, 2 hour long segment and just, I don't know, ask my husband. I don't remember it. But that's where I
Yeah.
kind of realized, I think, that it was harder than I realized. And birth is inherently to your body, even if it's not mentally a traumatic process, at a minimum to your pelvic floor, even if you don't tear. It's just that's hard on your body and it's hard to go through mentally, even if everything goes to plan. It's still a hard thing to do. It's very labor intensive, no pun intended, on your body. And so it just at first I thought it was just birth being normal but hard, and then I
Mhm.
realized it was a little bit more than that, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you bring up a good point about like having to reconcile with not having certain things happen like you wanted them to,
Hmm.
especially like as you're postpartum and you're trying to think back and like remember all these things that happened and then being like, oh, but I didn't get to, do this or this, like you said, like with the
Hmm.
different positions you were hoping to do. So I
Yeah.
think that's part of it too, is it can be hard to kind of reconcile and like almost like
Hmm.
grieve the birth experience that you wanted and didn't get.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. There's one more I wanted to add to that I just remembered that was something else I forgot and I just remembered. But after my birth, my baby was so small at birth and she was only 4 pounds, 13 ounces, but she was just so little bitty that her weight dropped and they all do a little bit. It's okay. No one, well, I was going to say no one told me. They probably did. And I was so fatigued that I didn't receive it. But I wasn't aware that they drop so much at birth and they can drop up to 10% of their body weight and be completely fine. My baby dropped a little bit more than that, and my milk hadn't came in yet because she was so early. I had prepared all these things mentally. If I was going to labor on time at 40, 39, whenever weeks, that if I had gone into spontaneous labor, I wanted to collect colostrum beforehand, do all the things, be prepared. No, didn't get that, but that's okay. And so I didn't have any colostrum, and in my post labor haze, I had the biggest panic attack of my life just because I was so tired and I thought that I was causing my baby's weight drop, even though the nurses were like, it's okay, it's okay. We have donor milk. It's all right. She's gonna be fine. And I thought I was hurting her for not being able to give her only my milk. And I just, when you've been enduring physical work for then 29 hours and not really resting and everything, I was just out of it mentally. I was so tired. And I just, you're not fully reasoning in that headspace. And that's okay too. You got to give yourself grace. And that's what I learned in birth, that I had probably the biggest panic attack ever because I just couldn't make her milk and I thought I was hurting her.
mhm.
And after that, I realized that, man, maybe maybe I was impacted a little bit
Yeah,
from just everything going on too, where I was like, maybe okay, maybe this was really scary, and I have to let myself admit that. But
yeah.
that was part of it too, just letting myself realize and be okay with the fact that it was a scary birth. But yeah,
It's so important that you realize that. I'm sure there's a lot of little moments where you continue to realize
totally,
it, and
definitely.
going home after having this and having to stay in the hospital as well, and that fear of like not being able to nourish your baby appropriately, all those things that come with postpartum, are different
Hmm.
stories. And then earlier you were talking about when you got home that you were feeling weak and not really knowing how to support, do all the things that you need to do. You could take care of your baby. What things
Hmm.
did you do moving forward to balance, understanding as you slowly understood what you could, what you couldn't do? Were there resources that you felt were helpful, people that were helpful, things that you made yourself kind of set aside? That way you could balance letting your body heal, because I think that's many times something that we forget after we have a baby.
Yes. Definitely. There was a point where I had to physically make myself nap, and I want to say it was the second or third day postpartum. My husband just did the entire night and like put me to bed. He was like, "You have to rest, or your blood pressure is going to go high again, even more than it is." And it's funny because I have my OT brain. I know about all the things. I know about fatigue. I know about grading your work. I know about all the things, but when you're in it, it just kind of goes out the window, and that's okay too. But I wanted to do, which is I think also funnily an OT thing a little bit. But I had to make myself rest. Basically, I had to let myself use my support system and let my baby be with my family, be with my husband or our parents, his or mine, whoever's, or just whoever was over in that moment. I had to let myself just sleep. And then I also just had to allow myself to slow down,
That's
essentially. And yeah.
That's so awesome that you got to the point where you're giving yourself grace and that you accepted that you did have a traumatic birth experience no matter what anybody else's might look like. So I
Mhm.
know as we're coming to a close on this episode today, what is something like a piece of advice that you would give to a mom that has maybe gone through something similar? So like in that moment right now, what would be one of your
Mhm.
biggest suggestions?
It I would say it's okay if it's hard, even if you have the most supporting family like I do. I have parents on both of our sides. I have an amazing supportive husband and all the things. And so and I never felt unsupported. I just felt the effects of, man, this is hard. And that's okay, even if you have all the things. And my family is the best I could ever ask for, and it was still hard, and that's okay. And you have to give yourself grace. You have to go slower than you think. And one thing that helped me is just literally staring at my baby, that just to be proud of yourself a little bit that you got through all that, no matter what your birth is, even if it's not even anything going off plan, even if you have the most stellar birth, even if you have a way scarier birth than mine. There's, a lot of medical things. People could have a serious thing that endangers their life. They could have something that endangers their baby's life. I came home with me and my baby, and I was very grateful for that. And otherwise, I mean, relatively healthy. We were stable enough to go home, and she had no issues. So consider for myself very lucky in that, but I also realized that it's okay that my birth was scary, and the things like the fatigue and throwing up everything that I had in my tank for 29 hours, and the really, really high blood pressure, everything, magnesium toxicity, all the things. It's okay if what you went through was scary, and it's okay to realize that and ask for outside help too.
Yeah, I love that you're like saying that it's something that you should be so proud of because I think that's so true. It's like getting to the
Mhm.
other side of things and realizing and reflecting back on like, oh, but look what I did. Like look what the
Mhm.
outcome was. And I love that that's
Mhm.
something that you found was really helpful for you. I want to thank our guest speaker Rachel for today for joining us and sharing about her unexpected traumatic birth experience and some things that she found that was helpful in terms of processing that. I hope you all remember that everybody's birth experience is different, and even if it was the smallest little unexpected thing that happened, it still can be a very traumatic experience, and you're allowed to grieve a birth experience that you didn't get. In the description to this episode, I will attach the blog post link with more information, resources, and our guest speaker's contact information. We thank you all so much for joining us today, and we were glad you're here listening. And we can't wait to talk with you guys next time.
I hope today's conversation gave you something practical to take into your day or simply remind you that what you're experiencing is normal. Returning to daily life after birth is a process and support matters.
However, your day continues from here, be gentle with yourself. You're doing important work. Thanks for listening. We'll meet you back here next time.